Welcome to In the Arena. I'm your host, Mindy McAlinden. Joining us today in the arena is Arkansas State Senator Breanne Davis. She's a leading voice on education reform and the sponsor of the LEARNS Act. We'll discuss the Act's impact in Arkansas, her legislative goals, and even hear a little bit about her new work with Senator Tom Cotton. Breanne, welcome to the arena.
Excited to be here.
Good to have you here. Thanks for joining. So I just want to get started real quick. Just tell us a little bit about your background.
So, I have been serving in the state senate for the last 7 years. Going back, though, I just started really in politics and teenage Republicans back in high school, back when Arkansas, just had a few Republicans elected, and just started volunteering then, handing out push cards and really trying to spread the party platform and the Republican message. When I was 25 years old, I had a 1-year-old and decided to run for school board. I really wanted to be involved in his education early on before he started school, and thought that that was a good way for me to be able to serve. And so I ended up serving on the Russellville School Board for 9 years. Had 3 more kids during that time, so 4 kids total. And like I said, 7 years ago, ended up in the state senate and have worked, numerous different jobs over the years, just in the community and in the advocating space, and love what I do.
So do you find, just real quick on that, being in the state senate, do you find that you're able to still have that same impact on your constituents like you did at school board? Is a much different level.
It is very different. I say there's no, school board is the closest level of government to the people, and there's nothing that you can do quicker to make people upset than to mess with their kids' education or their sports. And
So true.
yes, yes. So it definitely was a learning tool for me for those 9 years to really get in and understand just the workings of school districts and funding and how everything works. It really lends itself to my work today, serving on the education committee. So I appreciate all those years I was able to, be trained and have that background and experience. But yeah, it's different in the same. It's the people business, and I think politics is so relational. That matters, I think, more than anything, because what people want is for you to advocate for them and help solve their problems. And I really view us as middlemen. We're in the middle of government and people and helping to bridge the gap to solve any problems and make sure government works well for them. And so I think it's relational, and I think that's what matters most.
I think that is the best part, actually, of politics, is being able to solve those problems when a constituent calls and you're like, I can help with that, or I know someone who can. And
Yes.
I do think that's
Yeah.
the most rewarding part. So speaking of getting involved in people's education, you certainly did that last session. So we had the LEARNS Act. And so let's talk about first kind of just top line, what is the LEARNS Act? Because we've referred to it by a couple different names. And then why did you think it was necessary to run that bill?
Well, what is the LEARNS Act? It's all encompassing. It really, as we all know, it was the governor's big initiative coming into office, and she said repeatedly on the campaign trail she wanted to be the education governor and really reform education in our state. And what that will do over time is make generational change. So I was just honored to be part of it and see it through. And as someone who has 4 kids in public schools this year, a senior all the way down to a kindergartner. So I've got the whole span.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yes, yes. I know how hard our public school teachers and employees work year round for our kids, but we clearly can see by outcomes that something needed to change, something needed to be done differently. And so I love that we attacked math and literacy and teacher pay and, paying off college loans, trying to really fix our teacher shortage across the state and recruit people who want to be in this profession, and make it a livable wage and something that they can, the work that they can be proud of and also support their family on. So the LEARNS Act was so much, and I think it impacted schools and teachers and families all across our state. And, with change, I know sometimes it's hard and there, were some bumps along the way. I just mean that in terms of attitude and understanding what the Learns Act really was, what it encompassed. And so I think now, a couple years out, things are calmer in the school districts and people are understanding and seeing the impact of it. And also, I think having their voices heard in terms of changes and tweaks that need to be made, and really understanding that this is a work in progress that we're all in together, trying to do the best thing for our students.
No, I totally agree. So let's kind of break that down a little bit. I know you have talked about this so many times, but let's run through some of the statistics. We raised teacher pay from what to what?
From 36,000 to 50,000.
Which is pretty significant. I mean, up in our area, I think we were at 49,000, so not as big of an impact for us.
Mhm.
But in other parts of the state, 36,000 to 50,000. I mean, that is an amazing difference. Are you hearing back from teachers that that was pretty significant for them?
Yeah, I have heard from some teachers that, maybe said, hey, my wife or whatever gets to stay at home with our kids, and this makes it possible, like getting this raise. And
Yeah,
I think, while we said it was for starting teacher pay, what we found out is that I think it was 60 something, 64% maybe of schools across the state were starting their teachers out at $36,000.
wow.
So while, people said, well, this is just for new teachers, what about veteran teachers? Well, the truth is there were veteran teachers teaching 8, 10 years, in our state that were getting 5, 7, 8, $9,000 raises just
Wow.
from the Learns Act, because they had been teaching for so long, but their salary schedule was so low because their district was starting out at 36,000, and then maybe just increasing 500 a year,
Yeah.
or something like that. And so I think the impact was much farther reaching in terms of teacher pay, than just new teachers or starting teachers, in a lot of our rural districts, which is so much of Arkansas. And I really think it made an impact to veteran teachers and new teachers alike.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then let's talk a little bit about the statistics that were quoted so often, but I think, we're so in the weeds. I don't know that everybody's ever heard these. What percent of our students were at a third grade reading level and a math reading level, I mean, a math level of third grade when they were in third grade?
So the statistics were around 34% of third graders at or above grade level. And then when you looked at 10th graders, if you looked at 10th grade scores, you were still hovering around that 34%, like give or take a few percentage points of students in 10th grade that were at above reading level for 10th grade. And so to me, what that said was those kids are never catching up
Mm-mm.
throughout their entire K-12 school career. And it's like once they're behind, they're just behind. And man, that's just so sad. We need reading for everything and math skills for
Yeah,
everything that we do, and to go on and be successful adults in the workforce. So those are the numbers that we want to
yeah.
change.
Yeah, I think it's so important that people continue to hear those numbers and the importance of really not just tweaking what we were doing in schools, but ripping off the Band-Aid and saying we're going to make a difference. Because if you've got a kid who's reading, I mean, if you've got 60% of kids reading below grade level, like you are sentencing to them to a life that is not as successful as they could possibly be, right?
Yeah.
You've just done so much to harm them. So I love that. Let's talk a little bit more about well, you said you had the literacy coaches coming in, really addressing at the early stages the reading and the math and making sure that kids are getting what they need, right? And is that for every school or just schools that need it? Is there a qualification process for that? Do you know?
So literacy coaches, I'm trying to remember what the second year qualifications were. It kind of has expanded every year a little bit more. I think
Mm,
it started with F schools and initially, and then I think DNF, and it may be so it's somewhere like in that range. It's sort of
okay,
starting at the most critical and widening out
working
as we
out.
go.
And this fall will
And
be the
so,
full implementation, right? The first year of full implementation. Okay.
yeah, it'll be fully universal this year. So every single student, whoever, can wants
Yeah.
to apply can apply. And so I do think the literacy coaches has maybe been a little bit of a challenge in hiring. That's just my perspective, not speaking on behalf of the agency or department, but
Hmm.
to get really high qualified people who are really trained in the science of reading and able to go into these schools. Not that we couldn't find them, but some were being pulled from schools. And so then that was an impact from schools that needed it. And then just sort of like the growing pains, like some C schools had them and then maybe lost their literacy coach because they didn't qualify as an F school, but that's what was keeping them at a C school. So it's like working
Right.
through those things that are not bad. It's just different. And we've got to figure out how to, do right by all the schools and all the students that need support. And so to me, I think, one of the biggest things that was misunderstood in the Learns Act was the third grade gate, saying if you are not reading at or above grade level by third grade, you're going to be held back. And what people didn't read through were really the fine print in that, the details. And it's not just like, oh, we're holding back 66% of kids in Arkansas that aren't reading at or above grade level, but it's that we're starting in kindergarten and
Hmm.
3 times a year doing an assessment, starting within the first 30 days of kindergarten, assessing is your kid like on track right now where they should be to be at grade level reading in third grade. And assessments, these get sent home with parents that say, hey, your kid is not on track to read on a third grade reading level by third grade. And those start in kindergarten 3 times a year. So the idea is that there's early intervention, there's parents understanding very early on at the beginning of their child's school career. And even if maybe a student's not behind in kindergarten, but suddenly they fall behind in the middle of first grade, the parents would be notified of that. And those students are then eligible to have high impact tutoring and different interventions within the school system. So they create an intervention plan for those kids to get them on track. But then outside of school, they qualified the first year for up to $500 a year for high impact tutoring outside of school to get those extra supports and services. Now this year it's $1,500 per student. And so like my daughter in kindergarten, she's going to repeat kindergarten. She has Down syndrome and she had a great year, but she falls in that category. She's behind. And so we qualify to get her into tutoring to help bring her up to, grade level or as close to get those extra interventions to help supplement what's happening in the classroom and support the work that the teacher's doing. So and then, of course, there's all these other like nuances within that third grade gate, so to speak, of holding kids back to make sure we're not holding every kid back and we're giving grace where it's needed. But just really saying, hey, we're putting our foot down, we're making radical changes, and our expectation is that kids can read on third grade level by third grade.
Thank you for taking time to kind of go in depth and explain that because I think that is one of those things that people throw back and go, you can't just fail kids. And that's not what you're doing. That's not what the bill does. That was never the intention. The intention, as you stated so eloquently, is to truly get our kids reading. There's no reason that almost every kid shouldn't be reading at a third grade level in third grade. And we're just putting things in place early on, which I think is a really smart way of doing it. So I appreciate you explaining that. So we've been in it for 2 years now. Do you have any benchmarks? Do you have any results? And it feels so early to start making those any assessments just because there's not been enough time. But do you have at least anecdotal information?
Yeah, I think the a big thing that is really important is that we changed our testing. And so we actually, like what a lot of states do, is work to create custom testing that matches the curriculum that's being taught and the benchmarks that students should be meeting based on what they're learning in the classroom. And I think the test that we were previously using, and we're one of the only states left using it, was an off the shelf product. So it wasn't really tailored to Arkansas's curriculum and was not reflective of what kids were learning in the classroom. So with Atlas testing, which is the new testing, and there's still, I think it's getting smoother. I think the first year there were some assessments throughout the year. I think there's monthly assessments, and I could be wrong on that, but it's throughout the year that they were really working on and trying to get feedback from teachers based on what they're teaching and make sure that they were reflective of what students were learning. So I think one really big thing is going to be the Atlas test because it's not off the shelf. It's
Mhm.
customized to Arkansas, what our state standards are, what our students are being taught. So we're testing something that is reflective of what students are learning. And I think we'll see some good impact with that, just because it's a more honest assessment. But I do think we're seeing improvement in literacy and just students having better success with these extra supports. And I think we'll see more as we go on over time when you really can compare more apples to apples instead of
Mhm.
apples to oranges, since we're just like through year two and things took so long to implement because it was such a massive overhaul, that I think it's you can like sort of claim some anecdotal victories, I think, for sure, but to really say like we've got hard data, this is it. I think we'll see that over the next couple of years.
I agree with you. And it's been just what I've heard has been great. The schools, people are starting to obviously, everyone can apply now. And you're hearing a lot of conversation, especially from some of the smaller private schools and the religious schools. They're kind of excited to bring in. And it's actually, we're seeing those teachers' salaries go up as well because, they
Yes.
weren't competing. Right. And
Yeah.
it was okay when the salaries, but now that we've raised the starting salary to 50,000, we're seeing other private schools also raising their salary. So I think it's got a lot of good ripples coming out of it. We did do some
Yes.
tweaks this last session on the bill. I don't think anything really major, but you do think maybe there'll be some tweaks kind of going forward just to keep, as you said, it was a massive bill, lots and lots of moving parts. Does that sound about right?
Yes, that I mean, and that's one thing that I love. The governor has said from day one. I went to every single town hall that she did across the state, just to hear feedback from people across the state. I felt the impact and the weight of being the Senate sponsor and really impacting teachers and students' education. That I wanted to hear directly. Even though I was just sitting in the audience, I wanted to hear what people were saying and what the feedback was, and really have like a grasp on how things were going post learns with implementation. And so I love, she always said, this is not a perfect bill. Like perfect legislation does not exist, and there will be tweaks as we go on. But unapologetically, we needed to overhaul education in Arkansas. And
Yeah.
Secretary Leva said the same thing. And I just love their openness and honesty to say, hey, it matters that we went big and we did something that is going to change our state for generations to come. But is it perfect? No. No one's out here doing exactly perfect work on a piece of legislation. So we're going to see how things go and tweak as we need to. We tweaked some things about the education freedom accounts, the EFAs this year, just sort of tightening the parameters around it. I think that we were very lucky that, we were 1 year in with homeschool and private schools. We were not seeing abuse, which that was sort of like the headline, like abuse is happening. But the fact is, one thing that we didn't consider when we passed Learns was when we referenced extracurricular activities, our definition in law of extracurricular was fitting for public schools. And that's how we had defined everything, like with the Tim Tebow law and that kind of thing. Students could go spend a period with an extracurricular in public schools if they were homeschooled. And so we didn't update the definition of extracurricular, and it didn't really fit with what we needed for EFAs. And so we just tightened up that language to ensure that in the future, if somebody tried to spend all $7,000 or whatever EFAs are worth on baseball lessons or tennis or whatever, that they can't do that. So we sort of put some caps on percentages, but we also wanted to be, you know, let's like loose enough to let parents say, we want to decide what extracurriculars are, important to our kids and our family and learning, and still give freedom in that, but also be, I think, just responsible and efficient in the way that we run this program. So there was a lot of bad information and a lot of misinformation around the tweaks that we made this session, but I think it's all settled down and people see it's not what they were reading on Facebook
Yeah.
or on some blogs, but it's actually beneficial for everyone moving forward. And I'm sure there'll be more in the next session as we move on.
Yeah. Well, again, with it being such a big bill, there has to be these continual tweaks. But I love the fact that the governor's office, that the legislature is looking at those and saying, let's make sure we are making it as close to perfect as we can make a bill. All right, let's keep moving on because I know I'm going to run out of time with you, and I always have so many questions and never enough time.
Yes.
So you have started a new job with Senator Tom Cotton, who is an amazing senator from Arkansas. We're so blessed to have him. Tell me what you're doing.
Yes, I am his campaign manager, and I am just honored to be able to do it. I mean, Senator Cotton is someone that, I mean, I think we all have elected officials that we just really love and believe in the work that they're doing and how they represent us here in our state. And he is certainly one of those people. I admire the work that he does. I respect him immensely. And I just feel honored to be part of, the team and working for keeping him here in Arkansas and letting him continue to represent us so well as Arkansans, but also help lead our country. I mean, he is, in leadership, as we know, and has some really, strong positions in DC. And I love that he leads our country well and represents Arkansas so well. So I'm honored for the opportunity and have enjoyed doing the work.
Well, you certainly have a background in campaigning, and so I think that he is also blessed to have you leading that because you are, if I can say it, a little bit of a bulldog when you set your mind to it, and which is a great thing. It's a compliment, but
Yes, yes.
definitely you will do a great job. So I am so happy for you to be doing that. Okay, so real quick, what else do you have as you move forward into? Well, I guess the rest of this session. Are you up for reelection in 26?
I'm not. This is my first 4-year term, so I'm not on the ballot till
Yay!
2028. I know, I
Well,
know.
congratulations. That's exciting.
Thanks. It
So,
is.
what do you think for coming up in 27 then? Are you already thinking about some priorities? Will they be in education? Do you have priorities outside of education that you want to start looking at? Kind of just give us a glimpse into the future.
Yes, I feel like, do you feel like we all start with priorities and then session happens and it like all falls apart and you
Yes.
end up doing all this other stuff? So, yes,
Yes.
I had priorities this session. I don't feel like I got to everything I wanted to do, but what I would love to do is focus in on a few things. The first one being food freedom, so to speak. We see RFK Jr. really, taking the reins on that, and it has been awesome. To see him really finally take charge of the FDA and all the horrible poisonous carcinogens they've been putting in our food for decades,
Yeah.
and really like listening to people and fighting back. I mean, I just think with um, the internet now and the access that we have to information and knowledge, we know so much more than we did, and we got a lot of maha moms out there that are informed with a lot of information, and we just love seeing what's happening at a federal level. And I'd like to keep fighting to make it easier. I mean, not just fighting chemicals in food. I hope the FDA tightens up and really takes charge of that, but some of our food freedom laws in Arkansas, it just, as I've said in years past, we've let it be easier to get meat that we don't really know much about from South America than it is to buy meat from your neighbor. And it
Yep.
shouldn't be that hard to buy local food from your local community, whether that be meat, vegetables, whatever, baked goods. So just looking at ways that we can really strengthen that, just the spirit of entrepreneurship and ag in our state, and really keep that going for generations to come. We see people dropping out of, farming left and right. And
Mhm.
I don't want that to be our future. I want it to be something people can raise their families on and also sustain us with good, real food. Another thing that I would love to see is, I've talked about this every session since I've been here and haven't done it, but I would love to have a legislative package of just education bills full of repeals. It's just striking language all the way through. We're just
Yes.
striking all these mandates we've put on. And it's something when I was on school board, I used to say, over the years, it's like blankets. We've just put one blanket on top of
Yes.
another on teachers and on schools to say, try this, try this, try this, but we never take anything away. And so
Mm-mm.
I'd really love to dig into all of our education laws and see what we can repeal and just file a bunch of bills that are repeals on mandates that we've put on our schools over the decades. That would be some things that I'd like to focus on.
I love that. And we could do that in any area, not just education, but I agree with you. And I remember so I'm only in my second session, but in my first session, 23, I think we added several mandates to teachers of things that had to be taught. And one of my friends, Representative Duke, who was, a teacher and on
Yeah.
school board, would always say, we've got to stop the mandates. So I think you have a kindred spirit, no doubt, no doubt. So I think those are great.
Yes.
Well, I have kept you for a while, so is there anything else you want to bring up before I ask you my last couple questions?
No, no, I
You
think
good?
we've covered so
Okay.
much. It's great. Yeah.
We have. It's been good. There's so much more I could talk about learns, but okay, so let's look at in the next year, either what is something that you hope to accomplish in the next 12 months, or conversely, something that you are just most proud of that you have done that you just want to share or highlight.
Oh, gosh, in the next 12 months, I don't even know. I think there's so much work to be done, and I hope it's a balancing act, doing all the work in Little Rock and staying engaged and on top of that, but then also being at home, having children at home still, communicating with constituents. And so I hope over the next year, it's a small goal that, I don't know how much it matters, but I do think it matters to people back home, just trying to communicate more publicly, maybe via Facebook, like really making a point to say like, hey, we're doing all this good work and here's what it is. And so that's maybe a time management issue. So that's a goal, but
I
it's one of, we're all in
think it's a
self-growth all
great
the time,
goal.
aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, in terms of what I'm proud of that I've done, it's just, there's so much, like amazing things I feel like we've done, and there's certainly no I in it. I always say one person serving in a body of 135, so no one gets anything done themselves.
Yeah.
It takes a team of people, but I really think that I've been able to advocate in the disability space, just
Mhm.
because of my daughter. I've learned so much in the last almost 7 years, just from her, and then from parents who have walked this journey ahead of me, and looking at way, like we've passed Lila's Law a couple sessions ago in 2021, and that prevented discrimination for organ transplants, simply based on a disability alone, which we see is happening in different places across the country. And sweet little babies are passing away because they're denied a life-saving organ transplant due simply to their disability. And so I think that was impactful work here in Arkansas. And then this session, we did some work on trying to get better access to dental care for
Mhm.
our individuals with developmental and individual intellectual disabilities that are adults here in Arkansas. I think we moved the needle some. I think we have a lot more work to do on that issue. It's complicated and includes Medicaid, which makes it complex, and their dental care is complex. And so that's something I want to continue on the charge for.
Oh, and I applaud that work. I mean, those are really good bills. I don't know if we've discussed this before, but I have a sister who's severely handicapped and mentally disabled. And so just really have a heart for that space and appreciate
Mhm.
all the work that you do. And I know you briefly mentioned it, but you do have 4 kids, while
Yes.
you do all of this great work. And your youngest child has Down syndrome, and she is 4, 5.
She'll be 7 next week.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. She'll
I
be
know.
7 next
I
week.
know. It's
That's
crazy.
crazy. I feel like she was just born. So, yeah,
Mhm.
so you do have more than your hands full. Okay, one more question, and then I promise I will let you
Yes.
go.
No, you're good.
Just real quick, tell me 3
Yes.
things that people may not know about you. Fun facts, serious
Oh
facts, anything
gosh.
you want.
Oh, I meant to think about this. Let's see.
Favorite
Let's see.
food. Uh,
Uh, well, pizza and cheese dip are my love language. I love them. Those are my favorite
nice.
foods. Yes.
Favorite
Gosh,
movie.
favorite movie. I love Ever After. It's such a good
Nice.
movie. I don't
That's
know.
an
It's
old
just a
one.
sweet, sweet little classic. Um, I played soccer at Washita
Huh,
Baptist.
I didn't know that.
Yes, yes, my first year in
Nice.
college. And I had not, I had only played 3 years in my entire life. Played soccer,
It's
but I got to
impressive.
play Washita. Yes. And I played alto saxophone from sixth grade up into almost till I was 30. I played in our church
What?
orchestra some, and yes, yes, I love the saxophone. I don't play
Did not
anymore.
see
I gave
that
my
coming.
saxophone away. Yes, I loved band. I love the saxophone, and anyway, so I did. I played for a very long time. Yep.
Okay, that's fun. I did
And
not know that.
I would like to
Yeah.
say, yes, and I would like to say in all the work, I have been married for over 20 years. And my husband and I, John Paul, it's like such a team effort to do this. Like, as you know, if you're juggling all these things with kids that are busy and the way that school is now, very busy,
Yeah.
then,
It's all
we're
those
both like,
mandates.
it is. We need to fix that. I don't know. I know we need longer dead weeks in the summer. We need more than two. I
Oh,
think we need
yeah.
a
Yeah,
month,
yeah,
a
yeah.
month of dead weeks in the summer.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something I'll run in 27. But he really helps make it possible. I mean, it's such a team effort. I think anyone with family and kids at home to be able to do this work, your whole family's got to be on board. It's a team
Yeah.
effort, and he helps make it possible. So we can all carry on.
That is
So,
fantastic.
yeah.
Senator, thank you so much for taking time to be with me today and just to kind of dig into the Learns Bill and give us a little more glimpse about who you are and how you do what you do. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today with Senator Breanne Davis. She is just a leading voice in the Senate of Arkansas. She focuses on education reform. She led the Learns Act, and really, we got an opportunity to dig in and to learn more about what different parts of the Learn Act mean, and kind of dispel some of the myths that have been out there, and really see the good that is being done and the impact that is already being seen as it rolls out for its third year this year. We also got to learn a little bit about her family. She's got 4 kids, and she definitely has a heart for children that are disabled and making sure that they have every opportunity that every other child has. So I hope you will join us again next week in the arena.